So the war in Iran is reshaping the world as we know it. The IRGC showed how easily a key transit hub like the Strait of Hormuz is to effectively shut down and the immediate pressure that can apply. I mean, we'll see how this war shakes out, but you'd better believe that countries and non-state actors around the world are taking note. Some are eyeing what their Strait of Hormuz could be, while others are working on new systems to avoid these critical choke points. It's all going to change. So to help us understand what's going on, we're joined today by Ami Daniel. Ami is the CEO of Windward, a leading AI company that provides maritime intelligence to a range of organizations around the world. They've also got a really cool and free tool called Insights that allows anyone to monitor what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz right now. I'll link that in the description. Really worth checking out. But with that, let's get to the conversation. All right, Ami, thank you so much for taking the time, sir. I know you've had a busy little stretch here, and your company is kind of right in the middle of a lot of things happening, so means a lot to chat for a little bit.
Thanks for the time. Great to be here. Yes, a lot is happening, I think, in the world in Strait of Hormuz. A lot.
Okay, so let's get into that. Where does everything sit today? We're recording April 7th, midday, April 7th, so no doubt it'll change in the next couple hours. But from your perspective,
Correct.
Where does it sit right now?
Yeah, I think we're kind of in the middle of a bit of a stalemate and maybe hopefully an agreement. But if we can take a step back, quick reminder: Hormuz is about 20 to 25% of the energy in the world, about 50% of the helium in the world, about 25% of the LNG, i.e., gas in the world. So it's big, and 15% of the containers go through Hormuz because they're transships in Jebel Ali. The world is not really built for 2, 3, 4 months of taking out in a day the 25% of its energy. Okay, think of it like the COVID-19 moment of the energy markets. This is how you should think about it. So remember that day we woke up in COVID-19, you had to go to the bathroom and there wasn't enough toilet paper, and you're like, dude, can I trade you eggs? Can I trade you eggs for toilet paper? Remember that moment in life? So in many places in Asia right now, that's from the past. In many places in Asia right now, there's no fuel. Okay, you just cannot fuel your car. Cannot, does not matter. And I think it's big. So we're kind of at the end, I think, of the period where people have reserves. And we can talk a bit more about that. But that's kind of the big picture. If we get that, we can talk about what's happening right now in Hormuz if you want to.
I think it's worth staying on the big picture for a minute because I think we're isolated. Like, I drove up to Nashville this morning and gas is more expensive than it has been in a while, but
but it exists.
Crazy. Yeah,
but it
right.
Exists.
Like, it's going to hurt a little bit to fill up this time. I'd rather not, but I don't really like filling up at baseline.
Yeah,
it feels. Are we isolated from this in the United States, or like what you just described is a very different scenario than I think we're experiencing?
100%. Yeah, because of what's called shale oil in the United States about 10 to 15 years ago, there was a fracking kind of technological breakthrough, and the U.S. became, from an energy importer, it became an energy exporter. Though it produces more energy than Saudi Arabia, which was obviously the biggest. So that's why the United States is absolutely insulated. By the way, President Trump and Secretary Hegseth are rightfully saying, we don't need this energy in the Gulf. Okay, it's not really our problem. Energy-wise, they're right. It's statistically correct. So yes, the U.S. is insulated from that problem 100%. Europe, UK, Asia, not so much.
Insulated right now. But is this the kind of thing that eventually will impact everyone? It's just a matter of time? To a degree, maybe?
I don't think, yes, but not through your gas bill. Through the stock market, maybe. So yes, earnings have been exceptionally strong, I think, in the US because of the AI revolution, which is obviously amazing. However, if you look at some of the stock markets, and that's not just AI, right? If you're going to have a global inflation, that will impact the US. By the way, there are many scenarios that in the US will be impacted. For example, if the Iranians would be allowed to charge money in what's called the Iranian toll booth for transiting the Strait of Hormuz, the finance minister of Indonesia already said, well, what about us? We should do that as well. It's a good idea, man. We could make a lot of money. And what happens if Morocco and Portugal do it for Gibraltar, or Panama does that for the Panama Canal, or whatever, Chile does it for around the tip of South America, or Turkey does it for the Bosphorus, and so on and so forth. Add $1 a barrel in 10 places and you get $10 a barrel more, which is like 10-15%, which boom, global inflation. So I think it's a very important moment of time for many aspects, really.
You compared this to the kind of the shock of COVID-19, which everything was moving smoothly, and then we had this big disruption, and kind of had to rejigger how a lot of things
Yeah.
were done. Is
Yeah.
that what you
We
see
went we
right? Like
went
we're
we
gonna have to
went
look at
from
a new method.
just so COVID-19, by the way, quick reminder, all supply chains were on just in time. So retailers did not have like big inventories or warehouses because why? You could ship it on a vessel and it would plus minus 1 day come on time. So basically your inventory was inventory on the water. It would have been shipped to you on time. That's it. C'est tout. Would work. And then after COVID-19, the world got back to just in case. So what happens if we can't get it to you? And by the way, I think right now in the Straits of Hormuz, there's a lot of actually trade locked in the Straits of Hormuz, about whatever, 1,000+ vessels locked over there. And I think Saudi Arabia and the UAE are trying to get a land bridge to Jordan, to get containers into Europe or from Europe because they're locked in. Like they need supplies, man. You need food, furniture, everything within the Gulf, right?
This feels like it feels different than COVID-19 because that we eventually kind of got. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the right way to articulate this. That was an issue that came and went over a period of time, and we had to
Yeah,
change how we did things. It
yeah.
feels like we're still trying to decide if the Strait of Hormuz situation is different going forward. Like it might not go back to what it was.
Yeah, I think first of all, I want to say it's an outcome of also the geopolitical dynamics, and I'm not sure we're going back to the previous geopolitical dynamics. The post Second World Order is done. Okay, the fact that the U.S. was the policeman of the free world and basically financed NATO and Europe, and it was some problem somewhere, the U.S. would come down, vulture down and say, "Here's like 250,000 soldiers. Here's like 3 carrier strike groups. Let's get it together." I think that world is done. I think President Trump actually already in his first presidency spoke about that. And I think there's actually consensus in the US about it. I don't think anybody in the US with a debt problem in the US are saying, "Oh my God, let's keep paying for all the rest of the world." That's not going back. The outcome of that, I think, is also Russia and Ukraine. So Russia invaded Ukraine. It's like global war, right? Basically, it's European war. And Russia is still standing, man. Yes, there's a bit of sanctions, they're a bit hit, their economy this, but they're still standing. Putin is there. They haven't won, but they also haven't lost. So I think, and also the U.S. moves in Venezuela, which is like the Monroe Doctrine, and the U.S. moves in Cuba. And I think President Trump said last week, Cuba's next. Maybe on the way back from the Gulf, the aircraft carriers will swing by Cuba, get that done, and then go back to port in San Diego. I don't know if it was a joke or not, but I think we can already imagine a world where countries like China go after Taiwan, where countries like Russia go after Finland, and you saw Finland and Sweden join NATO. You saw last week the UAE leave OPEC, which is the kind of oil cartel, and you saw also Iran in that Project Freedom Day, which we should talk about, attack one important thing, which is the oil facility in Fujairah. Because Fujairah, just a reminder for everybody, this is the Gulf, this is the Straits of Hormuz. Here's Fujairah. You do not need to go through the Straits of Hormuz to get to Fujairah. So the UAE, which was exporting 4 to 4.5 million barrels a day pre-war, has exported about 3 or 3.5 from Fujairah. Now it's down to 1 because of the Iranian attack. So I think
Gotcha.
everything's connected. Iran wants to take away the strategic leverage the UAE has and the UAE and the US has by having Fujairah. So the one single thing it attacked during that day of Project Freedom was that oil facility in Fujairah, which is down to 1 million barrels. So I think if you understand the world like that, it's a bit of three-dimensional chess where a lot of the old alliances, a lot of the old agreements, a lot of the old ways of doing business in the world are changing very fast, and at the same time, AI is accelerating a lot of other things. And I think that's why we have a lot of unexpected outcomes in the world right now.
What does this mean going forward then? Because that I understand the breaking of the system, and it's not going
Yep.
to be what it was. But
Yep.
what do you envision this looking like in the
I
future?
think what it means is, first of all, we need a lot more resilience. I think that's takeaway number one. I think because we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the world. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I think the world, first of all, us as people, us as private citizens of the world, I would say keep a bit more cash at hand, be a bit more liquid. That's a good advice, I think. because you never know what's going to happen right now, right? So, be a bit more liquid. That's one comment. But also, the world as a whole needs to be a bit more resilient. Preston is writing down, keep a bit more cash outside. But also, the world itself needs to be a bit more resilient. That means a lot more energy sources that are varied, a lot more supply chains that are varied, a lot more alliances. I don't think anybody anymore just says, "Oh, I'll just rely on the U.S. or I'll rely just on Europe or on the U.K." Like everybody understands things can change, and if Canada can partner with China, which they are due to the kind of rift between them and the U.S. This is something that I've never thought I'd see happen, like Canada partner with China, right? So I think there's a lot of unexpected things happening, but there's also a lot of opportunities. There's also a lot of opportunities because change means kind of balance of power changing, meaning there's opportunities for first movers. And I think we should also talk about what we see today in the Gulf, if it's okay.
Yeah, it's nerve-wracking, man. I just kind of
You do
throwing
this for a
everything up in
living.
the
Of
air.
course, it's nerve-wracking. You're on YouTube all day. You're doing podcasts on geopolitics. You come, honey, how was your day? There's war here. There's war there. Everything's blowing
It
up.
changes
How was
six
your
times a
day?
day.
Great. I had some flowers. Of course, that's your job, man.
I just like everything was not and has not been perfect. There's this feeling of uncertainty of saying like,
Yep.
I don't know
I
if the
agree.
next thing is going to be better. What if the next thing is not better? So that's
Yep.
it. But yeah,
Yep.
who get into the Project Freedom? It was about a day, 2 days.
Of freedom. Of freedom. A day of freedom.
A day of freedom. There were a lot of jokes made about this, we kind of set that one up for kind of teed it up for a lot of folks, but it seemed like it had promise and then just didn't last.
Yeah. First of all, of course, it had promise, and I'm not. First of all, I want to say I am not in the know of what was discussed before it was announced, after it started, and after it stopped. So I can't comment anything on that. I can comment on the reality at hand. I can tell you that, first of all, there's this thing called AIS. It's where vessels transmit their location. It's been very popular. However, in the last couple of weeks, and specifically since Iran has attacked ships in anchorages in the last week or so, the vessels turning off transmissions to protect themselves, not getting targeted, that number in the Gulf is up 600%. Okay? 600%. Why? Because shipowners are saying, listen, sue me for not telling you where I am, okay? But first of all, I want to live. I want to protect my crew. 600%. That means it's very hard without any special means, should I say it, to understand what's happening in the Gulf, first of all. I think it's a very important thing to say. Our company, Windward.ai, what we do is we use multi-source intelligence to figure out what's happening on the oceans and kind of distill that to maritime intelligence. And we've been using optical images, radar images, RF data, other sources to understand every day what's happening. So in Project Freedom, we did see a few ships go out. I actually saw in real time, as we were monitoring the situation for many decision makers, a vessel try to go out from the southern corridor so that you could go out from where Iran is, which is Talbooth, and southern corridor, which is Oman, where Oman is actually quite deep, actually. It's like 85 meters, so it's actually quite good. But that vessel was 5:30 a.m. It was just first light. And we saw it did a big U-turn. My assumption is the IRGC saw it and threatened it. And that's when it did kind of the roundabout. So I think what happened is the IRGC sent a lot of their fast boats, and we're seeing a lot of these fast boats operate. I think I saw about 90 of them today already in different images. Yeah, there's a lot of them. We have a partnership with a company called Vantor. We use kind of with partnership with them, 30 centimeters resolution satellite. So you can basically see everything floating. I saw personally 90 kind of these fast boats today. So there's a lot of them going on. And I think they just deployed these. By the way, Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of CENTCOM, said that I think it was Seahawks and Apaches who took out 6 or 7 of these as well. But equally, it's kind of borderline all out war, right? So the Iranians are not letting anything out. They're attacking them. You're attacking the Iranians. So I think it was a delicate moment, and somebody took the call to kind of stand down on that and continue negotiations. Which, again, I don't have all the information whether it's right or wrong, but that's what we saw.
It's that you mentioned the tool that you guys have, Insights. It's crazy that people can just monitor this stuff from around the world.
You
It's
could,
fast.
you can't anymore. You could. The US actually, it's a good point. The US actually turned off the access to all of satellite data above the Gulf, except to very few organizations. So actually, you could have monitored that, but as of April 14th, you can't. In the open source community, this is quite a stir because all the open source community used to use a lot of like satellite data, and now the US just limits it above the Gulf. You just can't access it. Our company can because we work with the US government and other parties, and we provide some of it and analyze what's called dark transit, i.e., ships going dark ships going through the Gulf. And we publish it at insights.windward.ai every day. Till today, there were 5 ships, I think, outbound and 4 inbound, up from about 0 and 2 yesterday. The pre-war average is about 130. Okay, so just to be clear, we're at whatever, 3 or 4%. But I did see it slightly peak up. And I think if you don't use these active satellites, you just won't be able to see anything right now. So we have like a very extensive monitoring plan of all these capabilities to make sure we have kind of eyes on the prize on what's going on.
Okay, so this is maybe a bit of a weird question, but is Iran presenting what's going through? I mean, they just stood up this Persian Gulf Strait Authority the other day.
Yeah.
Are they
great.
in email address, website, everything?
No, actually, they published on
publishing
LinkedIn. There's a guy publishing on LinkedIn saying, if you want any services to transit the toll booth, call me, and that's an Iranian number. So yeah, of course, why not? By the way, the US did say, if you're going to do this, we're going to sanction you. So if we catch that you have been like sending crypto or yuan or ruble or dollars, whatever, to a guy giving you services to cross the straits, you're collaborating with Iran, because this is kind of the countermeasure of the US, because otherwise ship owners started to say a bit, maybe it's worthwhile. I'll give these guys a couple $1 million and I'll get my crew out. By the way, it's a legitimate comment. If you're a commercial entity, not a government for a second, and you have a crew in with like 20 people that hasn't been home for like 60 days and cargo, maybe it's worth a couple million to you and you don't care who gets that money. Right? It's the US, by saying if every one of the ships is going to pay the Iranian, is going to be sanctioned and the owner is going to be sanctioned, I think the U.S. blocked that pretty fast, I think.
Are they, with the ships that have gone through, have you noticed any Iranian channels that publish like who is transiting, even if it's ones that they approve?
No, I have not. Okay. We have some idea, but it's also not a full idea. Like, it's really hard to keep tabs on exactly who's there every single day, every single moment. I think it's possible, it's just very expensive.
Gotcha. Earlier today, there was a...
sorry, please. No, you mentioned you also really need it. Like, it's not really that important to say, that ship got in, that ship got out. You can do it. It's a matter of right now, where the satellite industry right now is, where our intelligence capability is, it's more a matter of choice than a matter of capability, I think.
So, looking at the blockade, essentially, call it, both blockade in effect right now. I think it was the Washington Post earlier today suggested that it might take another 90 months. To 120. Exactly. Yeah. What does this look like if the strait is effectively closed?
I have to say, I spoke to a guy last week on Thursday, I think, and I told him I think there's a good chance there's a blockade for 4 to 6 months. Okay. So let me tell you something about Iran. They're Shia fundamentalists. Okay. And I went to take a haircut with my Egyptian barber. And we had a really interesting chat about the Iran-Iraq war, which he studied as a kid in school. So, Preston, have you studied about the Iran-Iraq war?
Very little.
Boom. Exactly. So it took about 8 years between Iran and Iraq to fight. About 1 million people dead. By the way, Ukraine's 4, right? So Ukraine is already about 1 million dead, or whatever, 500,000 dead. Okay? So it's not very far from that. It's the same pace, shall I say. 8 years until Iran agreed to a ceasefire, basically, that gave out a bit of what Iraq wanted. So this is the thing with Shia fundamentalists. It is not a rational player, at least not a Western rational player. Okay, it doesn't work within the same rules. So technically speaking, Iran is 93 million people. Okay. Absolutely, oil is their number one income. So you're taking away 90% of their income, but it's 93 million people. So, so I'm not sure that a couple months of blockade will really break them. Okay, because actually, from what I see, is by the way, it can make them poor 100%. Okay,
Hmm.
it can make them not be able to invest in nuclear weapons or in ballistic missiles. Okay, 100%. Absolutely, I'm not sure it's fun to live in Iran right now. I'm not sure you're going to have lavish vacations. But all the comments about the currency that people say, oh, the Iranian rial is 1.8 million rial, I think, per dollar. You know how that matters when you leave Iran. But if you don't leave Iran, it's 90 million people. It's a country bigger than Germany and France together. I'm sure there's a couple nice places to go out for vacation in Iran. Okay, I'm sure. Not everybody is Shia fundamentalist there. It's like 92, 93 million people. Not all of them are like bad guys with guns. So, so I don't think it's fun to be Iranian. But as far as I know, I don't actually I agree with that assessment. I haven't heard anything factual, right? Facts, not opinions. Factual that shows that the Iranian regime is going to crumble because of a couple months of blockade. Over time, by the way, take Cuba. Cuba is a good example. Cuba is much smaller than Iran, much weaker than Iran. It's a bloody island, right? Iran is not an island. There's like land. And the US has kind of been quasi limiting trade to Cuba since the Venezuela events. It's been maybe 45 days. Cuba is way poorer, right? It's a communist country. It doesn't have oil. It's not the regional superpower. And Cuba has not crumbled yet completely. It's not fun being in Cuba, right? Absolutely. They don't have the electricity all day long. They're not having fun. Maybe they are, by the way, because it's Cuba. They're drinking Cuba Libre and, they're dancing in the streets.
Climate,
But
yeah.
otherwise, I'm not sure it's fun. And they haven't crumbled. So when you talk about fundamentalism, religious fundamentalism, and ideology, it doesn't go away that fast because of economy. By the way, think of the US in the Second World War, and after the Great Recession of the 1930s. It was pretty tough to be in the US in the Second World War, there were millions of fighters, American soldiers, fighting, fighting globally. You had Pearl Harbor, which was a very bad moment, but the U.S., got up on its 2 feet and it fought back and it basically saved the world. So I think the point is when you have a joint enemy, sometimes it unites the people. It doesn't crumble that fast. So how does it look like? I think can the U.S. Do a blockade on Iran for 6 months? Absolutely yes. The U.S. Navy is the best in the world. Yes. My view, by the way, they might go after every Iranian asset globally because Iran has about 150 a million barrels of oil on the water still being delivered and paid for. So if you really want to take away their money, take away that, not just what's already out, not just what will go out. So there's a lot more to go after. So theoretically, in the economic levers on Iran, you can pull that lever very strongly to inflict much more pain. And maybe that, combined with the blockade, will have more effect. But just the blockade sounds logical to me. By the way, without being exposed to the intelligence, just my common sense and my knowledge.
It feels like more and more economic levers and economic means can maybe adjust behavior, but not topple an organization or topple a government. Maybe we
100%.
can get there, but it's just seems like in so many of these cases, North Korea, Cuba, Russia right now.
Exactly. Russia, North Korea, Cuba. By the way, take Hezbollah in Lebanon. I fought against Hezbollah 20 years ago. Their missile hit my ship. I almost died. We had 4 people dead, 12 wounded. Them. I live only by miracle, not by skill, I think, actually. It's a more miracle than a skill, unfortunately. Hezbollah has been under immense pressure, sanctions. It's been fighting with Israel for 2.5 years. The whole beepers thing, 4,000 people got, exploded in the middle of the night, lost their, sensitive areas or their eyes. 4,000 people. They're still under fate. They didn't give up. Why? Because they're Shia fundamentalists. Their drive is ideology. It's religion. It's been 47 years since the revolution in Iran. If you're 48 in Iran, I'm 42. You look like late 30s. Sorry, you look like early 30s, man. But sorry, late 20s. But I'm kidding. But I'm 42. Think about it that people 6 years older than me in Iran only know what it is to grow as a Shia fundamentalist. They've never thought about anything else in their lives. They have two full generations that only know Shia fundamentalists. It's not that easy to take down a regime that way. Not that easy, man, when everybody, 90 million people have grown for 50 years in the same way.
This all feels like we're in this slow phase of war. We're waiting for the next thing to happen, waiting for the blockade to take effect, waiting for the Iranian economy to be even more damaged, whatever it might be.
I think it's a Dr. Seuss book, The Waiting Game.
There we go. So
Really?
in this waiting game, Ami, what are you watching? What are you keeping an eye out for in the next few weeks or months?
I think, first of all, I'm watching. I think the best indicator is the traffic in and out of the Gulf, because the relevant parties know things we don't. They're like quiet approvals. There are quiet agreements between different countries. I heard there was a UAE vessel out today and a Greek vessel out today. So I think these quiet approvals and agreements of let's do things quietly, that's the most interesting thing. That's why I mentioned the vessel picking up a bit. Because it's picking up a bit, something's good going on in the negotiation, I think. That's my best indicator. Because I think some of them, by the way, have gone through the northern corridor, which is next to Iran. So they could have taken them out. Or the US, if it's Iranian ships, I don't know what it is, the US could have taken them out. So I think there's something going on where both sides are giving a bit more leeway. So that's my expectation.
It's a lot, man. I appreciate what you're doing, Ami. Thanks for that. The Insights Tracker is great. We'll get it back to the U.S. opening up satellites, and we can all check this stuff in real time. But what's on there now is incredible and a huge resource. So really appreciate it.
And that is powered by real satellites that we use. So you can't operate satellites alone, but you can use our insights at insights.windward.ai to understand what's happening in our analysis daily about the Strait of Hormuz.
It's excellent. Well, appreciate the time, sir. Always great to chat.
Thanks, Preston.
All right, so thank you so much to Ami for taking the time to walk through all that today. I want to highlight again the Insights tool. I just think you guys are going to like this. It's free. Like there's no strings attached. There's no sign up or free trial, emails, all that stuff. Just like click the link and you get to see what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. I think that's pretty interesting. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.